forget everything you thought you knew about cars. Some of the wildest creations in automotive history don't just break the rules, they shred the rule book and toss it out the window. From tiny bubble-like pods to rolling UFOs, these machines make you ask, were their inventors genius visionaries or complete madmen? And the real kicker, you'll soon see that some of these bizarre beasts actually worked. Buckle up, because this ride is going to get weird. Peel P50. Imagine driving something smaller than your office chair. That's the Peel P50. Built in the early 1960s on the Isle of Man, this little oddball still holds the Guinness World Record as the smallest production car ever made. At just 54 inches long and 41 inches wide, the P50 looked more like a toy than a vehicle. It had 3 wheels, 1 door, a single headlight, and room for 1 brave driver. That's it. The P50 ran on a tiny 49 cubic centimeter engine, delivering a blistering top speed of 38 miles per hour. But here's the catch. It didn't even have a reverse gear. If you parked badly, you had to get out and physically drag it into place using a handle on the back. It was part car, part gym workout. Surprisingly, people actually bought it, mostly as a city runabout. Only about 50 were made originally, but its sheer weirdness turned it into a cult classic decades later. Today, restored P50s can fetch 6-figure prices at auction, proving that tiny can be mighty when it comes to collector value. The Peel P50 wasn't practical, it wasn't fast, and it certainly wasn't safe, but it made history. Sometimes strange is exactly what earns a car legendary status: Stout Scarab. Long before minivans clogged suburban driveways, there was the Stout Scarab, a rolling beetle-shaped dream from the 1930s. Designed by aviation engineer William Stout, it wasn't just a car. It was an office, a lounge, and a futuristic pod on wheels. Its flowing Art Deco body looked more like a bug than a Buick, and inside it featured a modular cabin with swiveling chairs, tables, and space to work while traveling. At a time when most cars were boxy and utilitarian, the Scarab dared to be different. It used a rear-mounted Ford V8 engine, freeing up the entire cabin for passengers. The result was one of the earliest examples of a people carrier, decades before anyone coined the word minivan. But here's the twist. Only 9 Scarabs were ever built. Why? Its price tag was astronomical, around $5,000 in the 1930s, which was the cost of a small house. Combine that with a design that was just too radical for its era, and the Scarab was doomed to remain a curiosity. Collectors today see it as a work of genius, a machine that dared to imagine cars as more than just transport. Was it ugly? Maybe. Was it brilliant? Absolutely. The Stout Scarab was a car out of time, too weird to succeed, but too bold to be forgotten. Aurora Safety Car, 1957. Safety doesn't usually scream excitement, but in the 1950s, one eccentric priest from Connecticut thought he could change that. Father Alfred Giuliano designed the Aurora, a car he believed would save lives on the dangerous roads of post-war America. The result? One of the strangest, most bizarre-looking machines ever put on 4 wheels. The Aurora looked like a swollen fish, with a giant bubble windshield and odd protrusions everywhere. But its looks weren't the point. It came packed with features way ahead of its time: seatbelts, a roll cage, energy-absorbing bumpers, even a padded dashboard. Giuliano even claimed the car's front end was designed to scoop pedestrians onto the hood instead of running them over. Strange, yes, but visionary. Sadly, vision didn't equal sales. The Aurora cost a fortune to build, and only 1 prototype was completed. Its cartoonish looks turned it into a joke, and Giuliano was left bankrupt. The lone Aurora spent decades rotting in obscurity before being restored in the 1990s, where it finally earned respect as a true oddball pioneer. Was it ugly? Without question. But was it important? Definitely. The Aurora Safety Car proved that sometimes the strangest cars carry the smartest ideas. Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Sometimes the strangest cars aren't born from science. They're born from advertising genius. Enter the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile, a hot dog on wheels that first hit American roads in 1936. Yes, a real car shaped exactly like a giant frankfurter stuffed in a bun. Its only purpose? To make people laugh, stare, and remember Oscar Mayer. Different versions have been built over the decades, each sillier than the last. Some stretched nearly 30 feet long. Inside, the cabin was decked out with bun-shaped seats, hot dog-inspired decor, and enough quirkiness to fuel a lifetime of puns. Drivers, hilariously known as hot doggers, would cruise across the country spreading brand cheer. The Wienermobile became so iconic that when it was once stolen in the 1990s, the police chase made national news. There's even a Wienermobile toy, a video game cameo, and rental options where fans can actually spend the night inside one. Sure, it's ridiculous. But in terms of sheer cultural impact, the Wienermobile is hard to beat. It's proof that sometimes the strangest cars are the ones that stick in our memories forever, not because of speed or luxury, but because they make us smile. Dymaxion car. Futurist Buckminster Fuller wasn't satisfied with boring cars. In 1933, he unveiled the Dymaxion, a vehicle that looked like a cross between a teardrop, a Zeppelin pod, and a spaceship. With 3 wheels and a rear-mounted Ford V8, it was designed for efficiency, capable of carrying 11 passengers and reaching 30 miles per gallon. For the 1930s, that was jaw-dropping. But the Dymaxion's most bizarre feature was its steering. Instead of front wheels, the single rear wheel controlled direction, giving it the turning radius of a taxicab in a phone booth. It could spin almost on the spot, but the handling was so tricky that crashes were inevitable. At the 1933 Chicago World's Fair, one accident turned the Dymaxion into a media disaster. Still, Fuller's vision was bold. He imagined the Dymaxion evolving into a flying car, rising into the skies on retractable wings. That dream never materialized, but the Dymaxion's futuristic shape influenced later aerodynamics. Today, only a few replicas exist, preserved as rolling monuments to daring innovation. The Dymaxion wasn't safe, it wasn't practical, but it was unforgettable. Fuller wanted to reinvent transportation, and in his own strange way, he did. Ferrari 512. Modulo Ferrari is usually about sleek red rockets that scream elegance and speed. But in 1970, they unveiled something that looked like it had crash-landed from another planet, the 512S Modulo. Imagine a wedge so low you could barely slide a pizza box underneath. That was the Modulo. At just 37 inches tall, it didn't have doors. Instead, the entire canopy slid forward, like climbing into a UFO. Under its sci-fi shell, the Modulo carried a V12 engine with 550 horsepower, capable of hitting a theoretical 220 miles per hour. It wasn't just a design stunt, it could move. The strange circular cutouts over the rear deck revealed the engine like a piece of futuristic jewelry, while the smooth, flat body made it one of the most radical concepts Ferrari had ever dared to show. Of course, it was never meant for the street. The Modulo was an experiment, a design study to push boundaries. Still, it became one of the most iconic concept cars of the 1970s, admired for its sheer boldness. Car lovers and sci-fi fans alike worship it as a glimpse of the future that never was. Ferrari usually plays it safe with tradition, but the Modulo proved they could dream as wildly as anyone. To this day, it's one of the strangest Ferraris ever built, and one of the most unforgettable. Tesla Cybertruck. If the Ferrari Modulo looked like a UFO, the Tesla Cybertruck looks like something built by a kid in Minecraft. When Elon Musk unveiled it in 2019, the world collectively gasped. This wasn't a truck. It was a stainless steel wedge with sharp edges, no curves, and a design straight out of a low-polygon video game. The Cybertruck's body is made from ultra-hard stainless steel panels, supposedly bulletproof. Its windows, marketed as armored glass, famously shattered on stage during the live demo, turning the launch into a viral moment for all the wrong reasons. Critics laughed, memes exploded, and yet, orders poured in by the hundreds of thousands. Performance-wise, the Cybertruck promised big things, up to 500 miles of range, a towing capacity that could rival heavy-duty pickups, and acceleration that embarrassed sports cars. But none of that mattered as much as its looks. You either hated it or loved it, there was no in-between. The Cybertruck is proof that Strange sells. Its design is a giant middle finger to decades of pickup tradition, and somehow that gamble worked. Whether it becomes an enduring icon or just a cultural curiosity, one thing is certain. This is the truck that broke the internet. Amphicar Model 770. Picture this. You're driving along the highway, the sun is shining, and suddenly you veer off, not onto an exit ramp, but straight into a lake. No problem, because your car just turned into a boat. That was the Amphicar 770, a German-made oddity from the 1960s that doubled as an amphibious vehicle. On land, it looked like a modest convertible, powered by a small four-cylinder engine. But at the water's edge, twin propellers kicked in, turning it into a floating boat. Its name came from its dual performance, 7 knots on water, 70 miles per hour on land. Not bad for a machine that tried to do both. Around 4,000 Amphicars were built, most sold in the United States. President Lyndon Johnson even owned one, delighting in driving unsuspecting guests straight into his Texas lake before revealing the secret. People loved the novelty, but the Amphicar wasn't a great car or a great boat. It leaked, it rusted, and it wasn't particularly fast in either mode. Still, it captured imaginations. Today, restored Amphicars are prized by collectors, especially at car shows where they casually roll into the water, stunning crowds. The Amphicar may not have been practical, but it proved that sometimes being weird is all you need to make history. Sparrow 8-wheeled Marchetti. Most cars have 4 wheels. A few dare to use 3, but Swiss designer Franco Sparrow looked at that and thought, why not 8? In the 1970s, he built the Marchetti, a bizarre experimental vehicle with 8 wheels lined up in pairs. It looked like a stretched limousine mated with a tank, rolling down the road like something from a sci-fi movie. The goal wasn't just to shock. Sparrow believed more wheels meant more stability, better braking, and improved traction. In theory, he was right. The extra wheels spread the car's weight and gave it unusual grip. In practice, though, it was ungainly, heavy, and way too complex. Maneuvering it was like steering a small battleship through traffic. Only one was ever built, and it became less a vehicle and more a conversation piece. People didn't line up to buy one, but they did marvel at the sheer absurdity of it. The Marchetti proved that in the world of strange cars, sometimes the idea itself is more valuable than the execution. It never hit production, but it cemented Sparrow's reputation as a fearless designer. The 8-wheeled Marchetti wasn't pretty, it wasn't practical, but it was unforgettable, and that's exactly what made it legendary. Carlman King. Imagine if Batman wanted an SUV but also demanded it feel like a private jet. The result would be the Carlman King, a 6-ton beast that calls itself the most expensive SUV in the world. Built by a Chinese design team with European engineers, it's part stealth fighter, part rolling palace, and entirely outrageous. The exterior looks like it was carved from black crystal, angular, faceted panels that reflect light like a diamond. It's intimidating, bizarre, and absolutely unique. Underneath, it rides on a Ford F550 truck platform with a V10 engine, giving it serious grunt despite its massive weight. Inside is where things go wild. Gold-trimmed fixtures, huge television screens, PlayStation consoles, a fridge for champagne, and even options for a starry sky ceiling like a Rolls-Royce. Prices start at around $2 million, making it a toy for billionaires who want to turn heads in the most ridiculous way possible. Is it practical? Not really. Is it subtle? Definitely not. But in terms of strange cars, the Carlman King might be the ultimate modern statement piece. It's not just a vehicle, it's a flex on wheels. Messerschmitt KR200. When you think of Germany in the 1950s, you probably imagine serious engineering, efficient design, and no room for nonsense. Enter the Messerschmitt KR200, a bubble car that looked like a fighter jet cockpit glued to a tricycle. After World War II, Messerschmitt couldn't build planes anymore, so they shifted to cars. The result was this tiny tandem seater where the passenger sat directly behind the driver, just like in an aircraft. Its plastic bubble canopy flipped open like a jet fighter, and inside, things were extremely cramped. The KR200 was powered by a 191 cubic centimeter two-stroke engine that produced all of 10 horsepower. But because the car weighed barely 500 pounds, it could actually reach 56 miles per hour, fast enough to feel like takeoff in something this small. Drivers described it as both hilarious and terrifying to operate. Narrow roads and tight cities were its natural environment. But out on highways, the KR200 looked like it was begging not to be squashed by real cars. Still, it became wildly popular in post-war Europe thanks to its affordability and efficiency. Was it practical? Somewhat. Was it strange? Absolutely. The KR200 remains one of the most iconic microcars ever, a flying machine forced to live life with 3 wheels instead of wings. Toyota will vie. When Toyota usually experiments, you get hybrid engines or bulletproof reliability. But in the year 2000, they tried something completely different, the will vie. Imagine a car drawn by a cartoonist. Flat sides, triangular roofline, and windows that looked like they belonged on a dollhouse. It was marketed toward young Japanese city dwellers who wanted something funky, affordable, and a little rebellious. Underneath, the Will Vie was just a simple subcompact with a small 4-cylinder engine, but its design made people stop and stare. Some thought it looked futuristic, others thought it looked like an ironing board on wheels. Inside, it leaned into minimalism, with retro-style dials and quirky fabric choices that screamed personality over polish. The car didn't sell well, but it helped. Launched Toyota's Will brand experiment, which was more about image than mechanics. The Will Vie quickly disappeared from showrooms, but not before becoming a favorite among collectors of oddball design. It wasn't fast, it wasn't luxurious, and it definitely wasn't beautiful. But it stood out in a sea of boring compacts, and for that reason alone, it's remembered as one of Toyota's strangest experiments. BMW GINA Light Visionary Model. BMW is known for precision, luxury, and performance. But in 2008, they unveiled something that looked alive, the GINA concept car. Instead of metal, its body was made of a flexible textile skin stretched over a movable frame. The fabric could bend and shift, meaning the car's shape literally changed in front of your eyes. Need headlights? They blinked open like eyelids. Need access to the engine? The hood unzipped like clothing. The steering and seats adapted themselves around the driver, making it feel more like a living creature than a car. It was bold, surreal, and unlike anything anyone had ever seen. The GINA wasn't about practicality. It was about rethinking what a car could be. Could it be emotional? Could it change personalities on command? BMW showed that yes, it could. Of course, no fabric-bodied cars ever made it to production, but the GINA's daring approach influenced later BMW designs. Some people found it creepy. Others found it inspiring. Either way, it was unforgettable. The GINA proved that sometimes strangeness is the spark that lights the path toward the future. Reliant Robin few cars have achieved cult status by being bad, but the Reliant Robin pulled it off. Built in Britain for decades, this three-wheeled oddity was meant to be a cheap, lightweight alternative to normal cars. Because it had only 3 wheels, it could be registered as a motorcycle, saving owners money on taxes and licenses. The problem? Physics. With 1 wheel up front and 2 at the back, the Robin had a notorious tendency to tip over during turns. Television shows like Top Gear turned it into a running gag, showing the Robin flipping at the slightest corner. Yet despite the jokes, the Robin had a loyal following. It was affordable, quirky, and for many working-class families in the 1970s, it provided an entry into car ownership. Today, it's remembered with a mix of ridicule and affection. Some call it dangerous, others call it charming, but no one calls it boring. The Reliant Robin might be the clumsiest car ever made, but it's also one of the most unforgettable. Dodge Deora straight out of the 1960s car show fantasy world came the Dodge Deora, a concept pickup that looked like a Hot Wheels toy come to life. Built in 1965, the Deora ditched traditional side doors entirely. Instead, the entire front windshield lifted up, and you entered through the nose of the car, like stepping into a spaceship. Its surf-inspired design was sleek and futuristic, with a chopped roofline, elongated bed, and gold paint job that screamed California dream. Inside, the cabin was low and tight, with controls moved to odd places to make room for the radical exterior shape. Although it was impractical, the Deora became one of the most famous concept cars of its era. Mattel even immortalized it as one of the first ever Hot Wheels models in 1968, ensuring that millions of kids grew up pushing tiny Deoras across the floor. The Deora was never meant to see mass production, but as a vision of wild creativity, it succeeded perfectly. It's proof that sometimes the strangest designs live on not in the real world, but in our imaginations and our toy boxes. Spira foam car. Most cars are made of steel, aluminum, or carbon fiber. But what if you built one out of foam? That was the radical idea behind the Spira, a lightweight city car developed in Thailand. The body was constructed from a dense foam material coated with fiberglass, giving it a marshmallow-like ability to absorb impacts. In short, it was the world's biggest Nerf toy you could drive. The creators believed foam cars could save lives in congested cities where accidents between cars, bikes, and pedestrians were common. Instead of causing injuries, the soft exterior would cushion impacts. Weighing only about 300 kilograms, it was easy to maneuver, cheap to run, and far more eco-friendly than traditional vehicles. Of course, there were problems. Foam isn't exactly great for durability, especially in bad weather. And let's be honest, it's hard to convince people that their safe car won't dissolve in heavy rain or fall apart in a crash against a real SUV. Unsurprisingly, the Spira never became a mass-market hit. Still, it deserves credit for being one of the strangest and boldest experiments in car design. It wasn't fast, it wasn't flashy, but it was undeniably unique, a car that tried to hug instead of hurt. Ford Nucleon. The 1950s were obsessed with atomic power. If it could run submarines and planes, why not cars? That was Ford's thinking when they revealed the Nucleon concept in 1958. a futuristic vehicle designed to run on a mini nuclear reactor. Yes, you heard that right, a family sedan powered by uranium. The Nucleon was shaped like a spaceship, with a bubble cabin up front and a reactor pod at the back that could be swapped out at fueling stations. Drivers wouldn't fill up with gasoline. They'd trade in their used reactor for a fresh one. It sounded wild then, and it still does now. On paper, it promised thousands of miles between refuels and zero pollution. In reality, the idea was terrifying. The logistics of putting nuclear reactors in every neighborhood gas station made it completely impractical. Safety concerns killed the project before it left the drawing board, and only a scale model was ever built. Even though it never hit the road, the Nucleon became one of the most infamous what-ifs in automotive history. It was strange, dangerous, and brilliant all at once, a reminder of just how wild the atomic age really was. Zundapp Janus. The Zundapp Janus, built in 1957, looked like two cars glued together back to back. Why? Because it literally had doors at both ends, one in the front and one in the rear. Passengers sat facing opposite directions, so half looked forward and the other half looked backward, like riding in a bus shrunk to microcar size. The name Janus came from the Roman god with two faces, and the car leaned into that strange dual identity. It was powered by a tiny 250cc engine, producing a meager 14 horsepower, but its real draw was its unusual layout. For cramped post-war Europe, it was designed to be practical, cheap, and space-efficient. Unfortunately, practicality didn't outweigh weirdness. Drivers complained about awkward seating, sluggish performance, and strange handling. Only about 6,900 units were built before the Janus disappeared from production. Today, the Janus is beloved by collectors precisely because of its odd design. It stands as proof that in the quest for efficiency, some engineers were willing to throw style and convention completely out the window. It might have been a failure, but it's a glorious one. Covini C6W. 6 wheels. That's the calling card of the Covini C6W, an Italian supercar unveiled in the early 2000s. Inspired by the 6-wheeled Tyrrell Formula One car of the 1970s, the Covini sported 4 wheels at the front and 2 at the rear. The idea? Better grip, better braking, and more stability at high speeds. Under the hood, it carried a 4.2-liter Audi-sourced V8, pushing 440 horsepower. Good for speeds over 180 miles per hour. Its performance was impressive, but let's be honest, the looks were what made it unforgettable. With its extra wheels, the C6W looked part supercar, part insect, part engineering experiment gone rogue. Production was extremely limited, and very few people ever got their hands on one. While critics argued it was a gimmick, fans loved the audacity. It didn't just stand out, it practically shouted for attention in a world where supercars often blur together. The Covini C6W may not have changed the automotive world, but it carved out a unique place in it. Sometimes strangeness alone is enough to earn legend status. Volkswagen Thing. Yes, that was its actual name. The Volkswagen Thing hit American shores in the early 1970s, and it looked like a Lego set that had somehow come to life. Originally developed as a military utility vehicle, the Thing was boxy, flat, and unapologetically simple. Its doors could be removed, the windshield folded flat, and the roof ripped off in seconds. It wasn't fast, with a modest air-cooled engine borrowed from the VW Beetle. It wasn't luxurious either, but it was tough, quirky, and strangely lovable. Surfers and adventurers adopted it as a beach buggy, while families used it as a cheap, rugged runabout. In the U.S., it only lasted a few years before stricter safety regulations killed it off. But in that short time, it made an impression. People either laughed at it or fell in love with it, but no one ignored it. The Volkswagen Thing proves that sometimes the weirdest name belongs to one of the most fun, eccentric cars ever made. So there you have it, 20 of the most unbelievable and strangest cars ever to roll, float, or nearly explode their way into history. From nuclear-powered fantasies to foam-bodied experiments, each one proves that cars are more than just machines. They're imagination on wheels, for better or worse. Which of these bizarre creations would you dare to drive? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more wild rides.